3 years subsequent to overcoming Mechagodzilla, Kong has laid out his new area in the empty Earth and looks for a greater amount of his sort. On Earth's surface, Godzilla keeps on keeping everything under control among mankind and Goliath beasts, known as Titans, by killing Scylla in Rome and resting in the Colosseum a short time later. The ruler association accept that inasmuch as Kong and Godzilla work on various planes, there will be harmony. Occasionally, Kong rises to the top, explicitly when he really wants clinical consideration. On one example, his tooth is contaminated, and he wants a substitution, which is regulated by Catcher. Kong gets once again to empty Earth, at whatever point his work is finished. Ruler realized that Kong nearly lost his life during his last conflict with Godzilla and need to keep them separated. A ruler perception station positioned in the empty Earth gets an unidentified sign. By all accounts, the sign causes Jia Kaylee, the most recent overcomer of the Iwi clan from Skull Island, to encounter visualizations and dreams, causing her receptive mother, Dr. Eileen Andrews, Rebecca Corridor, distress. Andrews approaches Unit Caster Bernie Hayes with her information and maintains that his assistants should comprehend what the signs mean. After examination, Bernie estimates that the sign has concurred with explicit Titan occasions on a superficial level before. Thusly, the sign addresses a pain call to Godzilla. Likewise detecting the sign, Godzilla leaves Rome and assaults an atomic plant in France to retain the radiation. Godzilla then heads to the Titan Tiamat's den in the icy. Tiamat is the biggest single wellspring of energy in the world. Godzilla tears Tiamat separated and enters its nest to retain the whole store of energy. Ruler accepts Godzilla is reinforcing himself for an approaching danger. At the point when a sinkhole opens close to his home, Kong finds an unknown locale where a clan of his animal groups has made do, including an adolescent named Suko. After an underlying showdown, Kong powers Suko to lead him to the clan's den, and the two gradually bond on their excursion. Suko attempts to kill Kong by attracting him into the way of various beasts. However, Kong routs them all generally without any problem. This gives Suko the certainty that Kong is sufficiently able to confront the risks ahead. The clan's oppressive chief, the Scar-Lord, fights Kong with the guide of an old ice-controlled titan, Shimo, whom the Scar ruler controls with torment utilizing a gem. Shimo's breath was answerable for the keep-going ice age in the world. Shimo's ice breath harms Kong's right arm, causing frostbite. However, with Suko's assistance, Kong figures out how to get away. However, he loses his hatchet simultaneously. Andrews and Jia, close by Titan veterinarian Catcher, Dan Stevens, and connivance unit caster Bernie Hayes, Brian Tyree Henry, travel to the empty Earth to find the wellspring of the sign. They find the ruler station annihilated. As the gathering adventures forward to the wellspring of the sign, they find a sanctuary behind a natural bio-brilliant disguised boundary that drives them to an underground segment that houses an enduring Iwi clan, who convey clairvoyantly with one another. Examining a few remains, they gather that the sign was a clairvoyant misery call sent by the Iwi. While noticing Jia associating with the Iwi, Andrews voices her feelings of trepidation to Catcher that Jia might decide to remain with her kin and that Andrews would need to acknowledge it. Inside a sanctuary, Andrews reveals hieroglyphics showing the past and future. The Scar-Lord once endeavored to overcome the surface world and battled against Godzilla's species. Yet Godzilla crushed him and caught him and his clan profound inside the empty Earth. When Kong entered empty Earth, the Iwi public realized that it was inevitable that Scar Ruler and Kong would meet. What's more, there was plausible that Scar Ruler would overcome Kong and would disappear to the surface through the entries. Thus, the Iwi had been conveying trouble messages to draw in the consideration of Godzilla and Jia. The prescience additionally demonstrates that Jia would be the way to enlivening Mothra. Mothra is accountable for safeguarding the leap focuses between empty Earth and surface Earth and keeping up with harmony between the two spaces. Detecting Jia, Kong finds the sanctuary and is fitted by Catcher with a model exoskeleton arm support to fortify and mend his frostbitten appendage. The model exoskeleton arm support was put away at Station 1 and consequently was rapidly open. Unbeknownst to them, one of the Scar-Lord's supporters has followed them and illuminates the Scar Ruler, who gathers his intrusion force for Earth. Jia effectively stirs the renewed Mothra. Godzilla assimilates inestimable radiation from Tiamat's sanctuary, developing him and turning his dorsal plates red. Expecting to draw Godzilla to the empty Earth to help him, Kong surfaces in Cairo and shouts to Godzilla. Notwithstanding Kong's endeavors to convey, a furious Godzilla assaults him, and a concise battle follows until Mothra shows up with Jia and persuades Godzilla to help Kong. The triplet then, at that point, goes to empty Earth to confront the Star-Lord alongside Shimo and his military. The battle hauls Godzilla, Kong, Shimo, and the Scar-Ruler to Rio de Janeiro, where Shimo starts to instigate another ice age at the Scar-Lord's order. Shimo fires his ice breath very high, covering the sky and obliterating the sun. In spite of various endeavors, neither one of the gatherings can acquire power over the other, and the city of Rio is annihilated in the fight. The groups are equitably coordinated until Zuko shows up with Kong's hatchet and annihilates the precious stone controlling Shimo. With the aggravation gone, Shimo currently pays attention to Godzilla, who focuses him toward the Scar-Lord. Shimo and Kong then freeze and break the Scar-Lord. Subsequent to fixing Shimo's ice age with his nuclear breath, Godzilla gets back to rest in the Colosseum. Jia reunites with Andrews and lightens her feelings of trepidation by deciding to remain with her embraced mother. Mothra reestablishes the defensive obstruction of the Iwi's home and afterward withdraws. Kong gets back with Shimo and Zuko to empty Earth, where he turns into the Primate Clan's new chief. Sadly, the man won't quit draining and bites the dust as Jesse takes photographs of the entire interaction. A while later, the group enters the structure and the columnists follow them. They find a draining man requesting help, and he is chanced down. Jesse can't resist the urge to gaze as the group wraps up looking through the structure. By and by, Joel is snickering with a warrior as though it was an ordinary work day. The troopers catch a couple of foes and takes them out for execution, which Jesse takes pictures of as well. In a little while, the riders show up at a displaced person camp. All tents are full, so they'll in any case need to rest in their vehicle. While Jessie fosters her photos the prior way, she keeps on holding with Lee, who makes sense of her folks are likewise in a ranch, imagining nothing is going on. At the point when Jessie at last investigates her photos, she's disheartened that they don't look great. However, Lee reminds her this is typical. Only one of each and every 30 photographs will be commendable. Jessie in the end tracks down an astounding image of the perishing man, and Lee commendations her work. That evening the gathering can unwind with different outcasts prior to getting back to the abhorrences in the first part of the day. Their process go on as the columnists watch the endless passing and obliteration by the streets. Jessie takes more pictures, putting the essences of her companions on the shots for additional effect. Ultimately, they arrive at a town that looks completely typical, with individuals hanging out in the city and harmony all around. They come by a dress store and ask the representative what's happening. So the representative makes sense of her town, has decided to simply disregard the conflict. Jessie persuades Lee to take a stab at a dress, bringing up that being at war doesn't mean she can't have decent things. She prods her looks and snaps a photo of Lee's grin since it's whenever she first sees it. A while later, Lee returns to Sammy, who brings up there are equipped men on the rooftops. He additionally says this life could not have possibly fit them since it's exhausting. In a little while, the gathering tracks down an unwanted carnival with a dead man in the street. Lee checks the region with her camera zoom, however, doesn't see anybody. Joel chooses to push ahead, yet when they cross the entry curve, their window has chance. Overreacting, Joel speeds up and runs over the body until he tracks down a protected spot close to a truck to stop. There they find two disguised officers who are sitting tight for the shooter in the house to uncover themselves. As the columnists move around to cover this episode, the shooter fires at them and comes up short. Jessie and Lee take pictures while Joel has a go at meeting the officers, needing to know whose side they and the shooter are with. Anyway, the troopers have a place with no group. They're only two fellows attempting to kill an individual that needs to kill them consequently. After a few pausing, the officers at long last cut down the shooter and the gathering can leave securely. In a little while, the riders notice a vehicle is speeding to make up for lost time to them. Dreading the most awful, Lee dials back to allow them to pass. Anyway, the vehicle drives close by and a person shouts at them, giving them a panic. Fortunately, it's simply a trick, and these folks are Tony and Bohai, individual columnists and companions of Joel. It would seem during their night at the lodging, Joel become inebriated and let Tony know where they're going. Tony additionally uncovers Joel had hit on Jesse. He's so eager to see them that he moves through the window and gets in the vehicle with them, yet they're more amusing to say. Jesse is dazzled and attempts a similar stunt, winding up in the other vehicle. Bohai likes her better than Tony and speeds up to leave with Jesse. Lee is stressed despite the fact that Tony says Bohai is dependable, and she gets significantly more anxious when they quit seeing the other vehicle in front of them. Out of nowhere, a tactical vehicle passes by, and Lee needs to go off the street to abstain from crashing. Fortunately, she stops the vehicle just before they could hit a tree. They rapidly return to the street and find Bohai's vehicle deserted by a homestead with its entryways open. The gathering goes to explore and finds Bohai and Jesse were caught by supporter shooters, who are keeping them kneeling down while dropping bodies in an enormous grave. Sammy calls attention to these fellows aren't typical warriors since they're plainly doing this stealthily, yet Joel figures their press IDs can protect them all over the place. Lee, Joel, and Tony approach the shooters and make sense of that Bohai and Jesse are important for their columnist bunch, swearing they're about as Charlottesville to cover a tale about a college opening once more. Without a second thought, the head shooter shoots Bohai, leaving Jesse in shock and making Tony cry. The shooter asks them where they are from, so Lee, Joel, and Jesse notice their home states. Anyway, when Tony makes sense of he's from Hong Kong, he has chance too. As everybody panics, Sammy appears in the vehicle and stirs things up around town with it, making them fall in the grave. Jesse incidentally falls also, and she needs to get on the tremendous heap of bodies to get out. Joel helps her and the gathering gets back in the vehicle to drive away, disregarding the excess shooter that attempts to shoot them as they escape. Out and about, Jesse and Joel have breakdowns, and Jesse even retches. They scarcely travel a mile or two preceding Sammy reports he can't drive any longer and the gathering finds he's been shot. They move him to the secondary lounge and Joel assumes control over the wheel, driving as quick as conceivable through a consuming woodland. Ultimately, they arrive at the WF Army installation in Charlottesville, where they have a banner with just 2 stars. Tragically, it's past the point of no return. Sammy is dead. As Joel shouts at the breeze, the officers remove Sammy's body in a case. Lee gazes an image she took of dead Sammy.